these are, be it environmentalism as well as the trans issue, is that these seem to be sort of quasi-pseudo-religions. And part of it, in my opinion, and this certainly applies to Britain, where we're now minority Christian country, atheism, when the new atheist movement was highly successful and atheism massively on the rise, there's a God-shaped hole, and that these different ideologies have come up with not complete religions with many flaws, but are filling that gap, which is why people are so passionate and zealous about it.
That's right. And we Peter Boghossian, our mutual friend Peter Boghossian and I, we've done now 2 taxonomies of wokeism. One is a taxonomy of woke religion, looking at religious categories and how they explain climate, race, trans. And we just did one on psychopathologies, particularly the cluster B personality disorders of particularly narcissism and antisocial personality disorder, but also borderline and histrionic, and looked at, so you can provide a lot of explanation of woke ideologies as a kind of psychopathology, also as a religion. But I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I think that we asked one thing on that, we asked Abigail to help us figure out that what was trans, how was it a religious movement? And I think she took like a year. I think we'd already published the taxonomy, but she came back and she said, trans provides an alternative soul, a secular soul. So the idea that there's this, in Christianity or in other religions, the idea is that you have a soul, the soul lives on after you die. It was there before you were born, probably. Maybe some dispute about that, but that there's a soul. Well, if you're atheist and we think that you're reconstructing a new religion, gender becomes the new soul. So and of course not everybody has a soul. Some people that are cisgender people don't get one apparently, but trans people have a gendered soul that is the opposite of your physical body. And so in that sense, a kind of spiritual idea gets reconstructed through gender ideology.
If I can rewind one moment, because I'm quite interested in this idea of the psychological, not only psychological types, and this is something you're excellent at Public, is to bring in the psychological nature of why people make certain decisions. For your famous piece, there's narcissism of Justin Trudeau.
Oh yeah, Trudeau too.
Which went viral. But so you bring up those borderline personality disorders, narcissist personality disorders. I don't know if you've read, there's a book by Simon Baron-Cohen, who's the comedian Sacha Baron Cohen's cousin and is a Cambridge professor, looking at the science of evil and actually looking at these specific cases and how they can take can take grip of people and can even grow in certain societies. So I'm quite curious. Do you think what power those extreme examples of I guess mental disorders are at play in the gender, in these different quasi-religious movements that have recently emerged?
Yeah, great question. Well, so we're very interested in, so there's, just to split things up, there's psychiatric disorders, which you would include things like anxiety disorders, ADHD, there's depression. There's also what's often referred to as serious or severe mental illness. That's like schizophrenia, severe bipolar, depression. And then there's something else, which are called personality disorders. They're also in the DSM. All these things are in the DSM. But personality disorders are viewed as psychiatric disorders you can get over. If you're suffering from a lot of anxiety, I think the vast majority of people, exercise a good diet, a purposeful life, many loving relationships, friends and family, can solve a lot of anxiety disorders. Some people may need some medicine. That's fine. But you can overcome psychiatric disorders. Serious mental illness, you're living with your whole life. Personality disorders, you're also living with your whole life. So if you are, I think it's always helpful to think of these as on a spectrum. So if you're high on antisocial personality disorder, you tend to have much lower levels of fear, much lower levels of empathy for other people. If you're high on narcissism, you're much higher on a sense of grandiosity, my importance in the world relative to other people, a sense of entitlement. And there's other categories that we looked at that all come from the DSM.
This Machiavellian in there, or sadism? Is that sort of part of it? Is that, or is that a separate sort of?
Well, there's something there's been this it's controversial, a new area that people are studying. I think personality disorders are less controversial. It's evolved a bit, but there is this idea that there's cluster B personality disorders, include those four I was mentioning: narcissism, antisocial, histrionic, and the dark triad then is narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. Machiavellianism is just what it sounds like. The ends justify the means. You're using people, and I think some of the controversy with the dark triad or the dark tetrad is whether those three things are all the same thing, whether they're actually can be coupled. But there's been a bunch of good work on it. One of the most interesting papers actually came out on narcissism last year. And Jordan Peterson sent me all these things. So we were looking at them. He's on, and he had, in fact, we did an interview with one of his grad students is named Christine Brophy. We did a fascinating interview with her because she did a review of all this literature. And I think she did some of her own original psychological research. But really out of the 60s was this idea that there's only right-wing authoritarianism. There was this idea that there is no left-wing authoritarianism. Well, that was a problem because, of course, you have communism, which is...
Half the world were literally underneath left-wing authoritarianism, and they're like, talk about blind spots.
Well, and there's even an argument, I don't know where I come down on, which I don't even know it matters, but where there's like, is Nazism even a right-wing ideology, or is it really a version of a left-wing ideology? But the new research finds that left-wing authoritarians, people that, support socialist dictators, or people that support censorship, you think there should be a committee to decide what you should be allowed to say. Though that it's almost identical with narcissism. And you can sort of see why, which is that you have a strong sense of entitlement. I see this on the censorship stuff all the time. Of course, we the good people should decide what you're allowed to say and hear on social media platforms. That's a sense of entitlement, sense of grandiosity. And then there's a kind of psychopathy or antisocial part of it, which is that they don't really care or even think about the impact on other people. They say they do, but really it's about feeling powerful and domineering. So, lo and behold, the ideology that claims to be more caring and compassionate for the vulnerable actually ends up caring the least about them. And we see it in the WPATH files. The moment that things go sideways, they say, oh, well, that's the fault of the patients. They just have to take responsibility for the choices that they made.
So how is it that, I'm assuming that there aren't that many people who have these personality disorders. Like, I'm assuming it's a small, single digit percentage. How is it that they then accumulate in such power? Or is it that all of us have that ability to, or that potential to have these traits?
Yeah, I think it's a spectrum. And so when you're saying, I think people that get categorized as having narcissistic personality disorder, they score the highest on a questionnaire that they're supposed to do with a therapist. So same thing with antisocial. So by the way, political correctness affects everybody, including the American Psychiatric Association. So they stopped saying psychopathy. And I think the switch from DSM-4 to 5 was from psychopathy to antisocial personality disorder. So
because that's politically incorrect.
Psychopathy, it's a euphemistic treadmill. Yeah, euphemistic treadmill is that you don't want to call people psychopaths. But
what does euphemistic treadmill mean?
Oh, do you know what euphemistic treadmill? Yeah. Euphemistic treadmill is it's where you words get these connotations over time, and then you decide that the word is the problem. So it's you can't say retarded. You can say, developmentally delayed until that becomes, it's not. And then the latest of the euphemistic treadmill is you're not supposed to say addicts. You're supposed to say people with substance use disorder. You're not supposed to say mentally ill. You're mentally ill people. You're supposed to say people with.
I was once told off for saying brainstorming. And saying that I was told that was offensive to people who have what's it called when you spaz out?
Right.
use the politically incorrect term, and that the better term was mind shower. and have a mind shower because that's less offensive.
I mean, I think the person that said that to you, I don't think that they actually care about the feelings of the people they claim to be protecting. That's a way for them to gain
Power.
Advantage over you in the conversation.
Control, yeah.
I was very interested. I mean, this is for sidebariing, but I mean, I'm very interested in how, so we're sort of getting this question, how do these guys get power? Part of it's through language, and I think it's like the left is so good at language. The left, I think, which is disproportionately, has more of the intellectual class as the universities, they spend a lot of time creating the right language that's a manipulative language so that you think you're agreeing with something, then you discover later, oh, that doesn't mean quite what I thought it means. Equity is a good example. If you agree with equity, most people think it just means like, I think I'm agreeing to equality of opportunity. No. You're agreeing to equality of outcomes. Completely different thing that actually may undermine the equality of opportunity part, as we've seen, with racial preferences in hiring and admissions. So to your question, how did they do this? There is, according to the Ponerology book, in this book, which is really a study of totalitarianism or a study of evil, he says people with these personality disorders, he calls them characterological disorders, but they're personality disorders, particularly the narcissists and the psychopaths, they end up working together in a sense in these institutions. The narcissists will sort of mesmerize you. They're the charismatic intellectuals. They're the ones that really, oh my God, it's so exciting. Trans, they're often the intellectuals at the universities. They bedazzle you. You're really thrilled by it. You feel like they're selling you liberation. And then the psychopaths are the ones who will just fire your ass if you don't conform.
Thanks for watching this clip from The Winston Marshall Show. You can click here to watch the full episode. And for more clips like this one, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, be well.